so excited for this February episode, Dina.
Yes.
So have you ever traveled like to other countries far and wide by yourself?
I have not.
Me either. But doesn't it sound kind of exciting?
It sounds a little exciting and a little bit nerve-wracking and kind of many emotions.
Well, we are bringing on the show Miss Robin Finney. She is an intuitive coach for solo experiences, as in solo by yourself.
And soul.
Yes.
S-O-U.
Yes,
L-O.
like deep down.
Yeah.
She is a Oracle certified source leader, retreat master, transformational coach. So she's got a lot of things going on. She's an author, an international model, which you are going to see shortly, a speaker, a world traveler. I love how she calls herself aunt extraordinaire, and which goes to show that she also calls herself the wandering aunt.
Yes.
And she supports others to help them explore the unknown, like with curiosity, so they can show up authentically for these retreats and solo experiences, because you don't want to be blocked, right? Mm-hmm. She lives a bold, unconventional life as a nomad, and she has been doing this since 2018. She's traveled solo across 6 continents and has modeled in many different photo shoots as a support of supporting locals. Yes. So I can't wait to hear a little bit more about that. And she currently is residing in Brazil, and that's where she's coming to us from.
I know, I'm so excited.
But we'd like to start with showing you some photos of what she has done in these different places she's traveled to.
Absolutely. You're gonna love these photos.
Gorgeous.
So this is her in Brazil, where she's residing now.
Yes. Looks beautiful. I don't know, it makes me want to go there.
And I love that these are all different like modeling shoots and just personal, like, let's just take a photo.
Right, I know that some of them, yes, we heard a lot about the Chile trip.
I know that's Australia.
Yes, it is. I can tell by the Opera House. That's definitely some adventures.
So beautiful photos.
Absolutely.
Amazing places that she has explored. And I just can't wait to have this conversation all about how these have impacted her.
And the whole local aspect.
Fantastic. So let's welcome Robin to the show from Brazil. Thank you for joining us from overseas.
There she is. Hi, Robin.
Hello. It is so great to have you with us today. We're so excited about talking about these solo experiences.
Yes, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you.
Absolutely. So certainly the first thing that comes to my mind is in 2018, like what inspired you to even start to do these solo travel experiences and decide that you wanted to like travel the world on your own?
Yeah, so as many of us can relate to, we live for vacation. And I was in the corporate world for over a decade in the apartment industry, doing marketing communications. I had an amazing company, amazing team, and I would save up my vacation every year to take like one big trip. And I would travel with some girlfriends from college, and we would go to just different places, different regions all over the world. And every time I would go, I would just like open up this awe and wonder inside of me and leave me feeling like, oh, I want more. And I would get back to work and everything. And then because I used all my vacation time at once, I'd be waiting for the next cycle until I could go again. And finally, around 2017, I went on a retreat, and I just got really clear, like, ooh, I'm playing it safe in life. And yes, I have stability. Yes, I have a good income. I have a great community. And I just knew there was something more, and that if I didn't listen to that whisper, then I would regret it. And so my motto became, if you don't go, you don't know. And so I finally, in 2018, was like, okay, I've got to do it. And it wasn't just like I've got to do it. It was I'm actually going to go both feet in, sell most of my belongings, sell my car, let go of my apartment, and go for it. And so I literally just was like, okay, let's see where this goes.
Well, that's amazing that you were able to just do that, because I think many people ignore the whisper for a long time, right? And you being so young, I love the fact that you grasped onto that. But 2018, 2019, great, but then 2020, that hit, that changed everything for you. How did that impact you, and how did you respond to that?
Yeah, it was really, it was challenging because so the photos you saw, like, of me in Tunisia, that was where I was at the beginning of 2020. And then I started hearing about COVID, and I was like, I was hearing about it long before it was even being talked about in the US, and I didn't know much about it. And then I ended up being back in the US, and then borders and everything started closing. And it really was an identity, I wouldn't call it crisis, but it was an identity shift for me from being free, traveling where I wanted to, when I wanted to, and then being back. Luckily, my sister, I've kept her place in Dallas as a home base, so I was surrounded by family and had community there, so it was really great in that sense. And it still caused me to really look at my identity and look at, like, who am I without travel? And I recognized how much I was equating those two things. And that's kind of where I was in the corporate world. It was like, if I wasn't traveling, then I would be depressed or going through a phase of like, oh, this isn't going to happen again for another year. And so being grounded actually allowed me to recognize that as much as I love travel, I can create those experiences no matter where I am in the world, because they start here. They start in your heart. They start with yourself, that connection to yourself. So it took me the next 2 years to really focus on developing a new identity and relationship with myself, and then recognizing that travel is an aspect of that, but it doesn't define who I am.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. And, with what you talked about before of kind of saving up for that one vacation, I feel like that's so many people. And I hear that so often with, people just kind of like, focusing on now the next vacation, which is going to be next year or in 6 months or whatever. And you kind of decided to take the plunge, which takes a lot of bravery. It takes a lot of confidence in oneself to do such a thing. And, I was talking about you with a friend, and she, her question was something that I was like, I'll have to ask her. She's like, how does she support herself to do this? She's like, man, I would love to quit my job and travel the world. And I'm like, I don't know. So how do you support yourself in being able to really live out this freedom nomad style life?
Yeah, so it really comes down to what you value in life. So a lot of people will say, if you wonder what you value in life, look at what your money goes towards. And so for me, it was always food and travel, and I live for experience. So it's looking at the different areas where you're giving that energy. And also I was very clear from the beginning, I'm going to go all in, I'm going to try this. So I sold my car, I cashed in my 401k. I lived I literally went all in. And I was able to live off of that for the first almost 2 years. And then I reached the point where I was like, okay, I got to start bringing in some income. So I had no idea what what I wanted to do or create. So I started picking up some freelance work, and then it was through my travels and just expanding myself more that I was able to step into coaching. And the pandemic's actually what supported a lot of that, because I was grounded in one space. And so it caused me to also just look at what gifts I have outside of my skills, my skill set, and really start to look at like what excites me, like what really lights me up. And it really was clear that it's inspiring people to live their best life, step into the unknown with curiosity, so that they really can know their whole self. And so that's where I started leaning in, and it's not been an easy journey financially. There's definitely ways, like I could have cut corners, I could have taken a traditional job again. I did, like during the pandemic, I did work at REI, which is a adventure lifestyle store, and because I needed like that grounded stability a little bit during that time. But really, it's just been like, whenever you have a hunger for something, you show up and you take on whatever's out there, so that you are continuing to live your dream, but not in a way that compromises who you are. And so I think there's a balance between that.
Sounds like another silver lining of 2020.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like you've touched on a silver lining for sure.
Yeah.
And I was going to kind of lead into, you know, what have you learned about yourself through this nomadic lifestyle, but it sounds like you've really touched upon that. So I'd like maybe for you to go back to something that I addressed in the introduction, and it really highlights more of the wandering ant and how that title came to be, because I really think that family obviously is so important to you. So I'd love for you to touch on that a little bit more when it comes to who you are.
Yeah, so Wandering Ant was actually created 2 or 3 years before I even embarked on the solo journey. And I was starting a blog, so I wanted to start writing about my experiences and just life and just what I'm learning through life. And so I created 2 of my favorite loves. I combined them, wandering and being an ant. And it really, like, one of the areas that I like, being there for my community, my friends, my family, like that's always been a high value for me. And I was very clear from the beginning, even without knowing how long I would be living this lifestyle, how long I would be traveling or where I would be going. I was very clear from the beginning that I was creating a life of flexibility so that I could be where I wanted, when I wanted. And that includes being there for my littles. That's what I call them, my littles. And being there for those moments and showing them that, 1, there's not one way to live life, and 2, that it's like I'm still going to be present in their life. And so I've really made that a point to come back to the States or even have video chats or ways to keep that connection going with them, because they've given me my favorite role in life. And so it means a lot to me to show up inside of that.
Nice.
Beautiful.
So when you talk about, having these solo, and again, I love it's SOULO, these solo experiences for yourself, you have started to create them for other people who maybe are wanting to do this, but maybe not ready to do it completely on their own. So I would love to just hear about a little bit about that, like what that looks like for someone that you take on a solo experience, and then what do you hear from them from doing this type of solo experience?
Yeah, so I love it because the soul part, the reason I put the soul in there is because I believe that travel exposes us to connecting with humanity on a different level, and also connecting with ourselves on a different level, because we step out into the unknown. We see that there's other ways of living and being and doing life. There's not just one way. And it starts to bring up things, and you ask yourself like some of the deeper questions. And so what I love most is I'll get clients who are like, I want to go on a trip. I want to build that confidence to go somewhere. And they do. and it's great, and they walk away like what they come back with is even more valuable than what they even imagined possible. Like I've had clients who go places outside of the country, and they think like, oh, I'm going to take this big step to traveling by myself. And they think that that's like the part of it, but then it's through the journey that they recognize like, oh, they start to learn more about themselves. They start to connect with strangers and recognize like, oh, there's actually beauty everywhere in the world. I don't have to be afraid of people, and people want to help me, even if we don't speak the same physical language of communication. I can still receive support and share that energy with people. And so it's really beautiful to work with clients, and there's different levels where it's like I have some who are completely brand new, never traveled on their own before, never had a passport, to ones who have traveled frequently, but maybe they're connecting in a different way, like an ancestral journey, and they're doing things a little different. Like maybe they always buy one-way tickets, and this time they're trying on like, oh, I'm actually going to buy a one-way ticket and just feel my energy around where I'm going and not book everything in advance. And so it's such a beautiful blend of the types of people that I get to work with and support in this way.
I love that you touched on the planning part, because I think a lot of people, you have the planners and then you have the not so much planners, and you know, in order to kind of feel it first, I think sometimes you have to let go, right? And that's a challenge for some.
And the benefit also of that is, you know, we talked about this before, was you could really miss out on things.
Yes.
If you are really focused on your itinerary and that's it.
Right.
There could be things that you could have possibly had some really cool experience or saw something different.
Right.
That sometimes it's great to maybe do a little of both. Maybe have a couple things in mind, but also be open to what could come your way.
Maybe do a little wandering, right? That brings up our next question, which I'm sure many people are thinking about. You know, I'm sure there are safety concerns. Obviously, you know, people aren't going to travel to those dangerous places that are like no travel zones, things like that. But there's always safety concerns when you're traveling by yourself. Can you touch on your opinion, your view of how you travel?
And maybe
solo?
preparation?
Yeah, preparation.
To help with that issue?
That would be great.
Yeah, and so I find this such a nuanced topic because, especially as like women, speaking to women in general, like we naturally have safety mechanisms built in within us that we've just learned through living in society. And so there's certain safety precautions that as women we're already used to taking, like having your keys out, having your phone with you, telling people, like communicating where you're going, where you're going to be. And what's interesting for me is, I was actually talking to my best friend about this, because she said she went to Chile recently, and she said, I noticed that my sense of awareness was heightened. Like I was like naturally feeling more guarded. And she said, but you're just out there and you're just like, just kind of like living life. And so for me, it really is that balance, because I tend to live life kind of through rose-colored glasses, where and maybe it's a bit naive of me, but I just always live into that energy and that belief that I'm going to meet the best people and experiences. And I do. It's like wherever I go, I meet the most amazing humans. And I also have learned to listen to my body, and that's come through experience. We all have the ability to tap into our intuition, tap into listening. Like for me, it's like if my shoulders start to get really tense or something, then I know like, ooh, maybe I shouldn't turn down the street. And so for me, it's really listening, and so not distracting myself. And so there's certain things, especially if I'm in a big city, it's not like walking with my cell phone just out in the open. or distracting myself in that way. It's being aware without looking like putting off like a fear energy. It's more of just like kind of being like, okay, I see what's around and I'm protected, I'm safe, like really just trusting that. And so there's different like preparations mentally. I find it's mostly mental in that regard. Like, and then it also comes down to your comfort level. So if somebody is not as comfortable with going out on their own, then we start small. We start in your hometown and say like, hey, let's start by going to a restaurant by yourself. Let's start by going on a walk. Let's start. And so it's like really with my clients, like working with like at a micro level to get them comfortable with being in environments that maybe are new and may not feel as comfortable in that regard. And it's really like when you can tap into those senses and that awareness, then it really, I feel like, opens and expands that level of safety in that way.
I love that you offer this micro kind of focus of starting to feel more comfortable doing something by yourself. It could be even going to the movies, or like you said, going to dinner. I think people have apprehensions even about those things within their own town. So I think it's great because that's something to really build upon.
Who would have thought? I mean, think about it though. If you can't go out to dinner by yourself in your own town, are you really going to hop a plane to Brazil?
Exactly.
I mean, but like that's really a no-brainer.
That's why I think it's great that is something that you are able and willing to support someone like from a very beginning step of going out to dinner by yourself. And it's funny because me and my friend were talking about it, and I'm like, yeah, once I went to a very classy restaurant by myself, and I kind of felt really uncomfortable. I was in Florida, I was by myself for a convention, and I had to eat, and I'm like, well, I'm gonna eat someplace good. And, you know, but I still felt uncomfortable being in a space where everybody else was paired up.
Yep.
So, you know.
Yeah, and that's part of the, one of the things I started doing early on in my travels was taking myself out on a date in various cities and places, and like dressing up and actually just like treating myself. And it's so funny because I would go to places and they would say, I would say table for one, and they'd say, oh, the bar's open. And I would say, no, I want a table, please.
Yep.
And because it's like I wanted that experience of being served. And then I also like I always create for myself, and I challenge this with my clients as well. It's like, don't bring a book, don't bring a phone, don't bring a journal. Like you can have it, but don't pull it out as like a safety thing and a comfort level. It's like, no, just allow yourself to sit in the experience of being there with yourself and think all the thoughts that go on, like what are people thinking? Why is this woman just sitting here by herself and all of that? And I find that it's like those little moments are what like allow us to step into the bigger moments.
I love that.
Absolutely.
Love that.
So what has been maybe your favorite experience so far?
Wow, there's so many. And I know we talked about this some before the interview, and Chile, going to Chile, I went to Chile in 2018, and Patagonia had always been like a bucket list place for me. And it's one of those places where a lot of times we think bucket list items and we think like bucket list equals expensive. And that's kind of how I had thought of it with this. And so it wasn't even on my radar. How I even ended up there was just like it was all divine. But I went and I connected with a old college professor that I had studied abroad with, who had a study abroad group there. And they'd invited me to a group experience, and I'm talking to all these college kids, and they had all gone to Patagonia, and they're like, oh no, you can totally go. They're like, you can pay a lot to stay in like nicer places, but no, if you have your own tent or you hire a tent, like it's not bad at all. And I was like, really? And so literally in that moment, and Patagonia tends to fill up like six months in advance. And so I got on their website and I happened to find some spots available in the next couple days. And so I just went ahead and booked a ticket, booked tents there, and then they gave me all of the rest of the gear that I needed. And
awesome.
and I went, and it ended up being incredible. And I think for me, like the lesson in that is whenever it's like where you hear a lot of times, like where the desire is present, so is the way. And it really was that, where it's like something that I'd been wanting for so many years. It's like the support and everything I needed showed up to make it happen.
Awesome.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I love that so much. So as we're nearing kind of the end of our episode, I'd love for you to share like any tips, any things that you haven't shared that you would love for our viewers to kind of grasp that would maybe lead them to try some of the things
Solo
we've talked about. Any type of solo experience.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Like either where to start
Yeah.
or something big, something little, whatever you think they might want to know that you haven't said already.
So I always say, like, really, and that's why it's part of my mission statement of stepping into the unknown with curiosity. So start with the curiosity and notice, like, if something keeps showing up for you, or you have a dream of going to like Patagonia or Sydney and seeing the Opera House, or there's somewhere you've always wanted to go, like really start to envision yourself there and be in that experience of it. And then also just notice, like pay attention if things start showing up. Like part of why I'm in Brazil to this day is in 2022, Brazil just started showing up. It wasn't like on my radar, somewhere to go. It's somewhere I had been curious about in the past, but it wasn't like in my awareness. It's somewhere I would be going that year. And then it started showing up everywhere. I would just meet a random stranger and be talking, and they'd be talking, like Brazil would come up in conversation, or I'd see a speaker on stage and they were from Brazil. And it's just like the little planting seeds. So it's kind of that law of attraction in a sense. And so start paying attention to that. If you start noticing like a place keeps showing up, or even this, it's like if this conversation, if you've always been curious about going to a restaurant by yourself, going to a movie by yourself, like use this as that catalyst to really like explore what that could be like. And then start where you are, start small. It doesn't have to be anything grand.
Yep.
So really lean into that.
How could someone reach out to you?
Yeah, so my website, my website, my social media, like all of that is, if you look up during Ant, AUNT, or Solo Experiences, either of those. But yeah, they can find me that way.
Well, thank you so much, Robin, for being with us. This was such a fun topic of conversation because I think it's number one, it's February. It's talking about like giving yourself a little love, and it's just such a cool, unique topic. And I hope that this conversation has inspired others to start, getting a little bit out of their comfort zone.
Absolutely.
So thank you.
Thank you so
Thanks
much
so
for having me.
much.
And we are going to wrap up our show today with Miss Diane. She is coming to us from North Carolina, and her video that she's going to share with us today is all about packing for that trip. So we have Robin talking about taking a trip. Here is Miss Diane about how to pack for that trip.
Hello. How many of you out there hate to pack? Everybody does. It's a lot of anxiety. What should you take? What don't you take? How do you fit it all into a suitcase? So years ago, my husband and I had a trip over to New Zealand, and I didn't know where we were going really. I had never been to New Zealand, and we were staying at somebody's home, and I didn't know what their home was like or what was expected. And so with options in mind, I took all options. I took a giant suitcase like this. It's as big as me, my goodness. And then I took another one, half that size, and another one smaller with shoes and boots and things in it. make a long story short, I was so embarrassed because when we got to New Zealand, if you know anything about the New Zealand people, you will know that they're minimalist. So I had brought more things in these suitcases than this woman had in her entire closet. And they kept making fun of me, of course, the whole time. And I didn't wear hardly any of the things. I mean, I stuck to the, 4 or 5 things that, worked for the trip. Anyway, we were going on another trip, not soon, not real soon after that, but I had enough time, which was a cruise for 2 weeks. And my husband challenged me to fit everything into one carry-on. Now this is a cruise. Okay, we needed evening gowns and party clothes and bathing suits and all kinds of things. And I had enough time to go around and shop. And I will tell you, it's all about the fabrics. So I went around and shopped, and I only bought fabrics that you could roll up in your suitcase. So even an evening gown I would do, or I did tops and I did some evening skirts, and I was able to mix and match them. And I rolled everything up, this is the tip here, as close as you can get, and I stuck it in the corners of the suitcases. Then I used packing cubes to actually take everything and put socks and things like that and stuff them in the packing cubes, and was able to lay things on like that. And you start with a rolling rack, and I actually unpack things. So I had a rolling rack of things that I wanted to take. Here's another tip. You have to commit to a color. So I'm going on a trip here soon, so I'm gonna do mainly black as my color because it's winter still. I'm going to always do, in the spring, navy pretty much. In the summer, white is my basic. In the fall, brown is usually my basic. So you take that one color, you can add one more color. So for the trip I'm going on, I'm doing black and evergreen. And if you have a dress, something you don't want to get wrinkled, what you do is put it in plastic, save those dry cleaner bags, because you can just, after you've got the packing cubes, you just lay it on the very top and you just fold it all in, and voila, it will be wrinkle-free when you get to your destination. Don't forget, wear your running shoes on the plane or in the car, or whatever is the heaviest. It might be a boot in the wintertime, so wear that, then you can fit more things in your suitcase. And always steam things ahead of time. I have a fabulous steamer, and you will be ready to go. It will be a perfect trip. You will not miss a beat, and you'll have an amazing time. The thing is, you have to really commit to what you're taking. And then, pop a color. Almost forgot that. So I always take a scarf. That's my pop a color. If I'm taking black, navy, it doesn't matter. So this time I'm taking this pink scarf because it will look really pretty with everything. And if you're going a place that's like the Caribbean or something, you can take the scarf. I like oblong scarves. And you automatically now have a wrap to go over any dress that you have for going out to dinner in the evening or whatever. So that's my tip. I hope you enjoyed it. Have a great trip next time you go on one. So in wrapping up our segment this time, I wanted to speak to everybody out there about the month of February being the month of love. And a lot of times there's a lot of emphasis on the cards and the gifts, and Valentine's Day, February being the month of love. I want to propose a challenge for everybody that the month is about loving yourself, that it's about taking time for you, real time. Make a reminder for yourself if you need to. My reminder is my favorite love bracelet that I wear. And on this particular bracelet, love faces me so that I can remember to send love to myself all day long. Then I have love, which is written backwards on the other side of the bracelet, which means it reminds me every time I give a hug, every time I give a handshake, the love is going to them. So do something to remind yourself that it's about taking care of you And we come first. We have to love ourselves first. If we don't love ourselves, how are we going to love anybody else? So do something special for you. I challenge you for this month of love to do something, a random act of kindness for you. Really, really for you. I love you.